Bum, 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 bum. Hello, everyone. How are you doing on this fantastic day? Let's get the tone, the harmonics, the frequency in line. Everything is a vibration. Your thoughts, your body, the earth, the sun, solar system, galaxy, universe. It's all about vibration and frequency. And yeah, the more we get into this, man, the more you get to see it. Hello, Twisted Isby. Thank you, all the moderators. Robert, USN Vet, good to see you. Thank you, sir. Brandy, how you doing? Susie Q and Jenny and Pamela, David Barry and Julianne Payne. How are you, my dear? Think agape love always and forever. Greetings. Gilbert, good to see you. And Valerie, hello, Joe Sapien. Autumn, so good to see you. Michael and Darth, well, Ruben, Truth in Me, and Barry Chad, Ninja, Nina the Mystic, how are you, my dear? Cupcake Butterfolds, hello, peace. Lost in Space, Existence Mean Mine, wow, yeah, so good, glad you did. Hey, Mojo, good to see you as well. Hey, Love Matters, much respect. B3 and Kevin, Melissa, and TCAT. So let me just invoke favor upon everybody this great day. May there be nothing missing, nothing broken in your life. May favor find you favorable and walk with you always. Hey, by the way, I was just out in this freaking sun and, well, that's a hot son of a you know what out there. That sucker hurts. It's a stinging one today. And as I speak, we are currently, particularly those of us facing the sun, I guess, we're under a moderate to strong cosmic ray storm as I speak. So that's going to become much more frequent. We're going to talk about this today in our classroom. We're going to get into some deep stuff, folks. You know, when the bubble begins to pop, it's like Trina says, Trina Phoenix, and, you know, she'll be on tomorrow on our show in the second look. You know, it's the Russian, you know, Cupid dolls. But when the bubble starts to pop, well, it has a chain reaction. So things are happening. And our reality is about to come much more, how about the word intense? I mean, you know, you could say interesting, but I think that's so well overused. Intense, and I think there's good reason for it. Today, we're going to go back and look at some of the facts and begin to put what we've been learning here into action. You know, as you build upon precept, concept upon concept, you have to, it will most often challenge many of your existing precepts, perceptions, and, you know, that's what we try to do here is to bring knowledge. And you can use the knowledge any way you want. You can accept it, reject it, you know, come up with your own. We live in a reality of infinite possibilities. The potential is there. And I think as we get into what we are talking about, we're going to have good opportunity. The thing that I keep on looking at, and we're going to discuss what's happening right now. Talk about current events. You can't get much more current than what we are doing right now and what we're in. Now, whether this thing goes full cycle, who knows? I got a new ring. No, it's same one. Yep. Ceylon Sapphire. Anyway, it changes colors. It really does. I don't know why, but anyway, let's get right into it. We got a lot of stuff to cover. I think you're really going to like this. So let's just start dealing with what we have been talking about. We've been talking about channeling. reincarnation. Um, are we natural channelers? Are we all eternal beings that have a past that we can't measure and a future we can't see? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. We're reading in amongst the other books that we're going through the Adam and Eve story, the evolution of cataclysm. And it really is true. There is no creation because it appears creation is merely the aftermath of the cataclysm. But anyway, we know our government knows something. So we're going to really get into those of you who like conspiracies, mysteries. This is a good one. It's starting to get very interesting. NOAA has revised the data on magnetic North Pole. We can't even be really sure. I think maybe the Russians know. But our government, the United States government, is such bad liars. But they knew that we are smart enough. Now, we don't need some bureaucrat telling us how to think or interpret the data. We're pretty sharp. And we know by the data that we're finding, and now Noah's not alone. I mean, you've got the Europeans, you've got the Chinese, you've got the Indians, you've got the Russians. I mean, the Israelis, I could just go down the list, all have a vested interest in this. This is global. This is global. It's not the United States. Yeah. But anyway, they have slowed the actual reports to show artificially that it's slow, it's not as fast. Well, they had to own up about 4 weeks ago just to that. So this is what we do know. Cataclysm. It happens with regularity. And it's probably the reason why our species, we seem to hit pinnacles in our evolution and advancement. But something knocks the rug right out from under us, pulls it out. We collapse time after time. Sometimes the periods in between the cataclysms allow man to achieve what we have achieved in the past and know. For instance, civilizations in the past had anti-gravity machines. They had ships, like our airplanes. Very common. Yeah, and that's in the written record. So check this out, folks, because as you see, these are the progressions of the North Pole. And you can see where the North Pole has been: Wisconsin, the Caspian Sea, Hudson Bay, the Sudan Basin, the Arctic Ocean, and now heading to Siberia. Again, the thing that as I was doing the research over this weekend, I was literally locked in, as my wife said, I'm down the rabbit hole, because I've done enough videos, nearly 1,200 that I've kept in the archives, that when you begin to look back at all my work, it's laid out. But what is surprising me is two things. Number one, the speed of the south magnetic pole. It's way ahead of where we see magnetic north. But here's the thing. It's going to arrive there first, it looks like, which is right here in this region here. This will be the new pole. So as we see the progression, they lag this behind 2,000 years. And if you can see this, you could, I mean, 2,000 years, excuse me, a decade. This is 2010, and we now know that it is out here somewhere, rapidly heading onward. Magnetic north has now obviously left the North American continent, left the Arctic, and is now heading rapidly, apparently, to Siberia. We know as well that there are the magnetic anomalies on our planet are showing the indicators. We're seeing, as this one right here from one particular journal was talking about, the swarm satellite. It's showing it. We have the technology. We've talked about the Russians last week, what they were out here 2 years ago. They know. This is not a mystery to them or to anyone else. Now, if you look at this, you can begin to see how over the last 500 years, where things have begun to get interesting. And again, you look at the bottom and you can see it's progressing by century. And the purple is, well, the changing magnetic field. We talked about how the swarm satellites, I think that's probably started a lot of this debate. When you begin to look at this from a picture on the North Pole looking directly down, you can see what's happening here. And we don't know if it's how far it's going to go over Siberia, but obviously it's heading somewhere. And if you follow this one here, again, they're trying to say, well, maybe it's slowing down. No, it's not. We know that it's not. And we see this in the data, volcanic earthquakes. And this appears to be a cycle. The Earth shifting magnetic field. Science have theorized that the currents occurring in the iron nickel core change pathways as the magnetic field affect one another. Folks, the fact is the matter, you can do this research yourself. We don't know. We don't know what the center of the Earth is. It's an assumption, a good guess. We don't know our Earth. The science is very, very limited. Over thousands of years, forces build up that cause a sudden flipping of the Earth's magnetic field. And what we're finding out, yes. Now, there are other reasons for that. The Earth is a huge electromagnetic hydrodynamic machine. It's a big word. And it is a machine. It has points where it gets weak and it has points where it's strong. And the magnetic North Pole has resided in several locations other than its current one, including at one point in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. So it's evidence that these things happen. We're understanding more and more about, the magnetosphere of our Earth, more about our sun. We understand that. There's plenty of other channels that you can go. What I want to bring this out, though, is the fact that our government knows this. I'm sure the Russians know it. Like we said last week, I think everybody knows it. We know it. I don't like it that we know it, but, what do? Well, we try to find the best that we can understand of what the past of us did. And maybe if it is within our lifetime, or maybe the progeny of generations coming forward, it does appear that it is here. I don't see it, nor do the leading scientists see it reversing. There is a correlation of ice ages with quick extinctions all over the world. There is a book I had and I'll have to get it out, that was discussing, well, scientists have puzzled in past decades, why do ice ages happen? We don't deviate from the sun that much. They didn't understand the internal mechanism of the very Earth themselves. The survival of primitive life at equatorial pivot points, the last two being the Malay Peninsula and the Galapagos. Both of those are rife with lizards. The existence of a coral reef on the floor of the Arctic Ocean. And more, we're seeing historically that the Earth's shell during the past 35,000 years has moved. I find it, fascinating when you look at this and you really begin to meditate and think about everything that you've learned. We don't understand the depth. My wife and I were talking about it, and she said, when you talk about this hot zone, goes down about 120 miles, 60 miles is where it begins at, and if that's how we get the ruptures. And she says, so how to go to the middle of the Earth, how far is it? And I said, well, I think it's about 13,000 plus miles. That's a long journey. And she says, well, I can't fathom that. And I said, neither can the rest of us. That we think that this is what this is, and we know the rotation of the planet has changed. It's retrograded, and apparently with frequency. 100 years ago, this would be considered lunacy. What do you mean the Earth stops and then retrogrades backwards in its spin? It's true. Go to Advanced Earthbound Science. These are an academic website. You can read it for yourself, what the latest science is saying. And as I just mentioned, as we're going live, that sun stings out there. And I don't know if I find it just coincidental that at the same time, we're in a moderate to severe cosmic storm. If one of these hits you, you don't feel it, but it's changing you, baby. And so now we know that the Earth pivots on its axis. In a normal year, it's about 26.5 degrees. But there's evidence that we have tipped over much greater than that, close to 90 degrees, much like our sister planet out there, Uranus. This is happening while you and I, in our lifetime, the planet has tilted. So are the other planets. Neptune, we're finding now, has had the same experience. Saturn used to be, and our ancestors could see the rings. They got light off of Saturn, all indicating something very recent. Again, look at the dates. The Wisconsin event, 35,000 years when it's before the current event started. The era of 29,000. It lasted 6,000 years. The Caspian Sea was a 10,500 year event. The Hudson Bay was a 7,000 year interval event. The Sudan Basin was a 5,000 year event. We don't know what we're at. It seems the numbers are compressed. Now, here's the thing to think about, folks. That 5,000 year period in the Sudan Basin was the a remarkable time because we have no records. None. For 4,500 years, none. And then the modern era started, the Arctic Ocean. This is going to happen. I mean, Hollywood has depicted it, but it is going to happen. Why? Because it's happened before. That's the Laurentide ice sheet. Folks, that went down all the way into Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, Wisconsin, Michigan. This is not, and we've been taught wrongly. We've been taught that these take millions of years. No. Again, man's ignorance, where we don't know everything. We have found more than one Atlantis of past kingdoms. And when they now tell us, and they've been telling us this, the oceans are rising. Anyone who lives in South Beach, down in South by the Keys, you know the stories right now of Venice. It's happened before, and it's happened with great sudden. I mean, when I talk sudden, baby, I'm not talking years, decades. This is a representation of the woolly mammoth that they found in 1901 in Siberia. The Russians immediately took it. The Russian Tsar, who was smart enough to realize the scientific value of going out there, getting the expedition put together, and then bringing this frozen mammal back to Moscow, and where they begin to do extensive analysis. Now, here's what they found. Weighed about 5 tons, which was about 10,000 pounds. The average is 3 to 5. This one was found in 1901, like I said, fully frozen. When I say fully frozen, we don't understand what that terms mean medically. The stomach lining instantly frozen. They estimate it probably took about 15 seconds to completely freeze that mammal inside and out, along with the earth around him. And here's the interesting thing, folks. It happened so quick. Not only did it have the tundra grass in its mouth, it had an erect penis. And the erection stayed because he froze that quick. That's typically what happens when something dramatically happens to the body. Yeah. And here's the thing. There are records predating the Bible and all the other holy books existing today. And here's the thing. No modern God is mentioned. No Jesus, no God of whatever the Christian God is, and no Hebrew God, no Muslim God, no God of any kind. None. And we've got records. And here's the thing, folks. No God of any kind, no UFO, no ET, no nothing saved humanity or the earth. We're talking potentially in an aggregated number, billions upon billions of human beings. And the thing about it is, folks, these catastrophes that happen with regularity, less than 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Everything has either been made up, altered, forgotten, destroyed, everything. Did you know that the Old Testament records, when Nebuchadnezzar came in and his captain Nebuchadnezzar came in, you know what they did, right? They stripped them all down. And they basically disassembled the whole temple, they burned every single document. None were let out. Now, the mythos is like they tried to say, well, yeah, there was one that maybe. No. The Babylonians were pretty thorough. And here, the strange thing is, that their whole history is recited from memory of Ezra. That means Genesis is a fraud, Exodus. Yeah. So we're reading the memory of an individual that was basically transcribed to 5 scribes that Atraxas brought in, not the Babylonians, Medo-Persians. But yeah, people don't study history, do they? That's why we're so easily fooled. We won't get fooled again. Well, one last thing. We're going to get into it this week. The evidence shows conclusively that when these magnetic anomalies begin to happen, humans will become extremely violent. Now, the interesting thing is that however the stories came back, the amazing thing is, and if it's been added to, who knows? No one knows. But they did find the thing that how they twisted the story. Now, in my upbringing, as in the Judeo-Christian Western mythology, was that, well, God had to wipe out the planet because it was sin. Wasn't no freaking sin. The thing is, human beings, when they are subjected to low field electromagnetic environments, become violent. How they found out about this is that they did an experiment with mice. The mice that stayed in the normal electromagnetic tube at the right balance that we're in, everything's cool. The one that they subjected to a lower electromagnetic frequency, they become cannibalistic. And then they begin to forcibly rape their own kind. This was mice. We have similar stories of what humans have done. And apparently it's coming here. Maybe this is why they're setting up the electronic prison right now. And maybe it's because they know there isn't anything they can do about it, or you or I. It is what it is, and it sucks. I know. And you doubt me on this, right? Okay. Let's get into the book. And I have another PowerPoint. And let me just show you. When I did the Bloodline Invader series, you ought to go back and check those, because you see, folks, this is over a year plus old. I tried to tell you back then that all the gods that the world worships, the whole thing that you see in the stories of who's that rapper guy or whatever, now he's heard from God. Which God? There's tens of thousands of God, as there are, look at the amount of galaxies. We can't count them. And yet, we seem to think that Earth here is the one that's got the whole lock, stock, and trademark on this. And the cataclysms. Now, I wrote this before I even got to read this book. The first cataclysm came in, they say potentially formed, but what we do know is that we can mark the magnetic pole and geographical poles for the first reversal. We know that the planet, when you look at it from magnetically, it's been hit. It has no spear to it. The water, what have you, but the planet itself is anything but a spear. Anything as a perfect roundness. No, quite the opposite. And you can see what's happening. You see that dark blue spot? Yeah. We know that the stories go about 10 gods who came at the time that Pangea, Ultimea, was existing. And this was the second switching of the continents. You don't think that there were people alive during this time, really? You see, Laurasia, Gondwana, began now the third great expansion. When Pangea split, that was the Triassic period. Was there people there? Yes. Any people up there? Yes. Over and over again, man has gotten the crap kicked out of him. That's why we've never advanced to our full potential. And I'll stop it right there. It gets even better into it because we find out so many things that we've learned here about Lilith. We're about to learn a little bit about Lilith. We're about to blow some people's mind on their current perceptions of what they think they know their Bibles. So all of you Bible freaks and the ones that have, want to get into this, let's get into this, because what you're going to find out, like much of what we have been taught, spoon-fed, has been deliberately altered, mixed, rearranged, rehomogenized, genetically, synthetically modified. And that's just the way it is, folks. I know it sucks, but hey, I didn't write the rules. So let's get right to this if we could. In fact, I'm going to get this up. There we go. All right. So I want to get into this because we're going to get into two different places. Number one, let me start. So everything that we have and this includes the Hebrews, Moses, the Egyptians, came from the Naga. Now, the Naga in mythology, and I don't think it was mythology, I think they actually existed, were half human, half serpent race. Yeah, I think they ruled this world. I think that their species was who knows how many indigenous species were here. But anyway, so a lot of what we had is in our stories of Genesis is taken from the Naga. So let's read. Now to the tree. The fruit growing on that tree symbolized the mankind which settled the mother continent ages before Adam and Eve. Folks, I have on my featured YouTube page, look at the two creations, two worlds. I saw this decades ago. I knew something wasn't right. But anyway, they're eating the fruit, tells us they were descended from this original mankind. There's the 6-day people is what it's known in the modern book of Genesis today. We don't know what happened to the 6-day people. They just up and disappeared. And then we had the pole reversal, the cataclysm worldwide in Genesis 2:4. All right. Eve eating first signifies that she was the younger generation. Adam eating second signifies that he was her father, which made her his daughter. Okay. His daughter? Yes. It is the origin of one of the oldest Hebrew laws. In a catastrophe, if but a male and female survive, they must mate, regardless of their relationship. If you want to check on this, read the story of Lot and his two daughters. Isn't it amazing that our whole species is predicated on inbreeding? Yeah. Ay, 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 ay. All right, let's go. The daughters were simply obeying Hebrew law. He is stated to be too drunk to know what he was doing. Ha! If he were, he couldn't have performed. He must have been a good actor. The glyphs on the creation is even more revealing. There are three figures represented on the stone. The top figure is the face of a sleeping or dead person. There were no separate symbols for death and sleep in the Naga. Both were represented as the same. The middle figure is shown as a male, and the bottom figure a female. And I wanted to make sure that we understood this. Yeah, we're going to get to this. All right. The middle, in addition, the female is representative of mother of all mankind. In addition, there are curved lines from the sleeping or dead person and the male middle figure to the bottom of the female figure. This glyph has been interpreted to mean that the middle figure, a male, was put to sleep, shown by the top figure, and a rib or ribs removed from him. Those were the lines. The bottom figure, the female mother of all mankind. This fits beautifully with the story of Eve's creation. Adam, therefore, being both the male middle figure and the top figure, a sleeping or dead person. There is a hitch to the story, however. The top figure, either sleeping or dead, is depicted as a female. How could it be Adam, asleep, awake, dead, or alive? Moreover, in the Naga, the curved lines denote parentage rather than ribs. So more reasonably, it appears the top figure is a dead female whose offspring by the male middle figure, Adam, was the bottom female figure, Eve, the mother of all mankind. He says, I've been asked countless times, how could one tell the top figure to be a dead female to the extent that I guess I owe that an answer here. In Naga, the prehistoric Mayan, they show that they worshipped but one deity and represented that deity by a glyph of a circle representing a sun. Anytime a circle was shown on the tablet, it could be only represented their deity. The tablet has two circles on it. Purists have stated that the writers of this tablet meant to show double intensity of the deity. Strange, I have never seen anywhere a double intensity of two circles in either Naga or prehistoric Mayan. The curious thing about these two circles is that they are located precisely where a female's breast should be on top of the top figure. Maybe that's what double intensity is all about. The most curious thing about this stone is that it fits the legend of Adam being a widower and the name of his deceased wife being Lilith. If true, it would also reveal Lilith to be Eve's mother. So in essence, the story as read from the glyphs would be that Adam and Eve, who lived in the Garden of Eden on the mother continent tree, were descended from the original mankind fruit of that land, which incidentally was surrounded entirely by water, serpent entwined around the tree. Eve was Adam's daughter, and he was a widower. They realized that in order to survive, that they had to leave and never try to return, for the motherland was destined to be destroyed by a cataclysm inundation. Eve had perceived this coming event, and Adam asked her how she had discovered it. She answered that she had inherited the intelligence to do so from her ancestors. As a result, she had gained victory over the inundation, Eve's heel on the serpent's head. Totally different interpretation. Would you agree? Not even close to what I was taught. This is such a curveball. It takes the wind out of the story that people think is the story. All right. They left the motherland, and afterwards, the continent, the tree, was subjected to a fiery earthquake, the flaming sword, during which it lost its foundation, the cherubims, and sank beneath the ocean, the serpent, which remained forever afterward, bearing the continent, forever referred afterwards, crawling on its belly. So he says, so let's review here the events. 2 cataclysms ago, and then apply our knowledge towards a representative translation interpretation of Genesis 1, 2, and 3, it may be the most accurate reading of a story written, are you ready for this? 11,500 years ago. So let's read the story. The story picks up, and I am going to get right there to it. Just give me a second here. Here we go. All right, so this is the translation. Taken out all the biasness of modern day religions, let's read what the story was from the Naga. They're the ones who had it, still do. All right, here's how the story reads. In the beginning, 4.32 billion years ago, the universe was created in God's great design. Included was our sun and our planet Earth. And during one of the many cataclysms that occurred during the Earth's history, this one being 11,500 years ago, the Earth's lands were all inundated with raging waters and ravaged by horrendous winds, and the oceans were all dark with muddiness. And the eel wind thundered over the troubled water also. Wow, huh? And as the storms abated, sunlight came back to the face of the earth as God intended. And while the cataclysm was abating, once more darkness and sunlight were reestablished and distinguishable, and it was good. And sunlight was again daytime, and darkness again nighttime, in accordance with God's design, and evening and morning made one day. Not even close, is it? Actually, it is. You can see how they homogenized it. All right, let's continue. Again, verse 6, God's original design was that there be a sky between the clouds and oceans. None of this crap about the firmament and the earth being flat and, you got to have this thing, and none of that. This plain old common sense. A common man. Yeah. Verse 7, and in accordance with God's design, the heavens were reestablished, and that the sky again stood between the clouds and the oceans as the onslaught of the great cataclysm abated. And God's heavens were indeed reestablished, and that evening and morning were the beginning of a second day. Okay. And God's design was that the lands would not be entirely covered by the oceans, as they were immediately following a cataclysm. So the disrupted oceans now settled, drained off the higher lands. And in accordance with God's design, the dry land was earth and the waters ocean. And once again, it was reestablished and good as God intended. Now, we don't know who this God is. Never is described. Just nature. And in accordance with, you could say, in accordance with nature's design, the dry land was earth, just as nature intended. Fits very easily. And since God's design was that earth should bring forth grass and herbs, yielding their seed, and the fruit yielding fruit containing its seed, the earth was again reestablished. Therefore, the earth, being reestablished, brought forth grass, herbs, yielding their seed, and the fruit yielding containing the seed, and it was good as nature intended. And the evening and the morning were the start of the third day. In accordance with God's design, there were normal lights in the heaven, which served as indicating month and the seasons and days and years. Where have we read this before? Well, if any of you are very well versed with the Epic of Gilgamesh, you know exactly what we're reading. As they served to furnish lights on earth as God intended. Not that God did it, it's just that it was his intent. Isn't that interesting? And as the great fog lifted, well, why would we know that a fog would have lifted? Well, because it was a pole flip. You put the ice caps down into the torrid zone, this is what you get. And the clouds broke, and the sun and the moon reappeared, and also the stars. Now, you see what's real interesting, because if you take verse 16 and start going in over to verse 9, going back up to verse 6, wait a minute. Thought we already had the sun out. Either we did or we don't. So something here happened. Again, while we're still in the 6-day event. Missed that one, didn't you? And once again, as nature intended, they shone from the heavens. And the sun and the moon again were able to divide light and darkness, which was good. Well, now we already thought, you see, something else happened. Earth wasn't quite settled down yet. And the evening and the morning were the start of the fourth day, and it was God's will that some of every creature, living bird, should survive the cataclysmic inundation. Now, you could simply say that this was an alien species. Caretakers, seeders. Something is coming back each time these cataclysms happen to repopulate the planet. And as we now know, anyone down who's ever lived in the South, you know, like with the kudzu and other things down there, you can clear off some land. And if you don't stay on top of it, within 2 to 3 years, you can go back and it's changed. And it says, surviving then were the great whales. I've told you my theory about the whales. And every living creature of the sea and every kind of winged fowl, and it was as God intended and good. And they were blessed with God's original design. These are the 6-day people now. They were blessed with God's original design to be fruitful and reproduce and replenish the oceans with sea life and the air with fowl. And the evening and the morning were the start of the 5th day. There's a lot in here. Again, we just kind of go, let it go by. And it goes on and says, and it was God's will that some of every creature and beast would survive the cataclysmic inundation. Surviving were the beast and the cattle, yada, yada, as we know, and it was as God intended and good. Let's get back here where the 6-day people start, which is in verse 26. And in accordance with God's design, man, who was created in the image God intended. Now, this is not in God's image. It is in the image God intended. What image is that? You see how they said, well, it has to be in God's image. No, because they get very specific about this. Also, was to survive and have dominion over the fowl of the air. Why would he have to survive? And have dominion over creeping thing on the earth. Verse 27. So it was God's design that man, who was created in the image God intended. I mean, interpret that as you want. Both male and female would survive the cataclysmic inundation. So now, wait a minute. Here in the sixth day, we've already got male and female. How can we have this recreating story in chapter 2? And it gets even more interesting. And they were blessed with God's original design. Now, I have yet to find anyone in any theology who can come up unbiasedly and tell me, well, what's the original design? Oh, we could all give an opinion, but opinions are like assholes. We all got one. Doesn't mean that it doesn't stink or it doesn't happen to fit. And they were blessed with God's original design to be fruitful and multiply. Well, you get all this thing in modern day Christianity and Islam and all these religions about the forbiddance of sex. Well, listen, if you couldn't get, let's say, sexy, you ain't going to have no multiplying done. And I guarantee they weren't doing it just on one particular day. And to replenish the earth, well, if you're going to replenish something, it means that there was something there before. And control it. Wow. And control it. That's a strong word. And have dominion over the fish in the sea and over the fowl of the air and every living thing that moves. And God's design was that man being given herb-bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of the tree, yielding seed. To man it should be for food, and to every beast of the earth, and to every fowl of the air. It was God's design was that the green herbs shall serve as food, as it was God's intended. Interesting words here. If you're a wordsmith, these are interesting things. And everything which survived was as God had originally created, and still was in God's design and was good. And the evening and morning here began the sixth day. Now, this is the whole thing on this thing. Even as you read, no matter if you read the Septuagint, if you read the Greek, if you read the Hebrew, you can see why they don't like this, because these people here apparently wasn't a thing wrong with them. They were good. They survived a cataclysm. So it tells me of a story, not of a God doing anything. It was the natural progression of a planet in the planet's evolution. But interestingly enough, it had to have been of something of intelligent design doing the genetics here. And the six-day people were perfect. Perfect. Now, here's where they screw you in the ideology. You see, they purposely, the first 4 verses of the second chapter is actually the end of the first chapter. But remember, there never were chapters. These were letters. It says, thus the heavens and the earth were reestablished, all the host of them. And on the seventh day, the recovery from the cataclysm and flood were complete. And the seventh day brought rest from the fight for survival against the cataclysm and its after effects. And the seventh day brought God's blessed peace, as the cataclysm had abated, leaving those of his creation who survived. Now, here's where something happens. These are the same regenerations of the heavens and of the earth as they were reestablished after the cataclysm previous to the one of this story, when the Lord God reestablished the earth and the heavens. Now we've changed deities here. We were dealing with a singularity. Now we're dealing with a committee. counsel, however you want to put it. And get this, and every plant of the field before that cataclysm was in the earth, and every herb in the field before it grew. For the Lord God had not brought rain upon the earth in this region, and there was not a man to till the ground. This is the key point to this. And how does this mean for us today outside of religious context? Because it's telling us a story, not of a creation story. They're telling us a story of a catastrophic cataclysm that kicked man's ass, wiped us out. So it says here that he had it in this region. It's not the world, folks. Now we're a defined region. And there was not a man to till the ground. Well, what happened to the folks over there in verse 26? Where are they? But there was this cataclysm, and great inundations rose over the earth. There's your key right there. That's the second great cataclysm. And it was God's will that man should rise above from the earth and keep the breath of life and remain a living soul. This is his story. Not the 6-day people, not the people that were here before. This is now something entirely different. And I see I'm running out of time. We'll pick this up on Wednesday. But we're going to learn, as the original text speaks, that there were other civilizations, apparently, of other people. And this is an isolated incident taking place in a very defined area. It sounds to me, just to me, as I continue to go down this, and as you'll see on Wednesday, this all ties to the cycle of cataclysms. We reinvent these stories over and over again because it's the only ones that we can come up with. Because we don't know. You know, we're going to get into what it's like to survive one day from this cataclysm. It's like when you were sitting there about to prepare your dinner for your family, and boom, baby, gone. And you were the only one that survived. What would your first day be like? Be very rough. Yeah, Darth, this is getting good. Let's see. I love this, and this is a type of discussion. I'll go back and look in the chat, but folks, this is what we're talking about. Now, if there is a cataclysm, and I don't know if we've gotten to that tipping point. Apparently, our government thinks so. Apparently, there's enough people in the know that think so. These magnetic movements of the poles are not imaginary. They're not made up. It's actually happening. And again, we all should be taking this very seriously, not be afraid. Take it seriously and ask yourself, what does this mean for me? Is it going to happen in the next 20 years? That's what they're estimating. Actually, the clock is running, because we're going to read in one particular document, about 24 years. That's what they're anticipating, but they don't know. What the magnetic South Pole is doing is crazy. So I don't know, maybe, but we're going to tie this all in. You know, to me, this is an amazing time to witness this. Apparently, there have been past civilizations and apparently individuals who lived through it. I don't know what that's going to be like. But in the interim, how do we apply this then to the spiritual growth of ourselves? This new creature, which we call Adam, was given a soul. Now, that leaves a whole lot of questions for Wednesday, and I'll probably bring it with Trina as well tomorrow. So we've got two different things going on here. We've got one set of humans. In fact, heck, I'm going to go over. I don't care. So let's go right back where we are, because I'll leave you with this thought. So here we have this story in 2:7 that this man has a living soul. We have no indication whatsoever that this man, male, female, had a soul. None. Nothing in here at all. Now think about this. I don't know how many of those people, I don't know how much sex they were having. I hope they were having good sex, you know? Good, healthy sex is healthy. But if they got wiped out, what happened? I mean, you think about, folks, from just a philosophy point of discussion, this would be entertaining, because you can't assume that they did have a soul. Never said that they did, but it makes clear distinction that this next genetic modification did. And then that's where we get our beliefs that we have souls and thus live through immortality. I don't know. Maybe they were the gods. Maybe the sun, the yellow sun, gave them superpowers. And maybe that's where we get Olympus from. And that's where we get the rest of the stories, the Hindu stories of Vishnu and Kali and the rest. Maybe this is where we get the Chinese deities, half snake, half man, ruling the heavens. I mean, this is just as good of a theory as anyone else has postured. I mean, we don't know what happened to them. We know that there was another cataclysm, apparently wiped them out. Well, maybe they left. Maybe they advanced to the point where they actually built their Vishnus, Varamas, excuse me. Maybe they were advanced enough that they figured out the laws of physics and figured out how to get off this place, because they weren't anyone left. It's interesting. I don't know. I mean, you put your own spin on it. Come up with your own beliefs. That in the end, it matters only to you what you believe. But this is a fascinating story to me. And the thing about it is, folks, where we're getting into the timetables, folks, it's very evident we're overdue. But that's for Wednesday. I'll leave that. Well, thank you for staying with me. Listen. All we do here is discuss. Nothing is by any means absolute. We look at all things, we consider all things, and again, it's a smorgasbord. Take what you think is works for you on your plate, and let the other stay for someone else. It will get consumed, but don't worry about it if it doesn't quite fit your, taste. It's all right. That's the good thing. That's how we all learn. All right, folks, thank you. I'll see you tomorrow with Miss Trina, and I'm sure we're going to have a good discussion on this one. Again, as the shirt says, I am a habitual line stepper, so that's my excuse. What's yours? All right, folks, much love to you, favor to you. Thank you for joining us. This is a vibrant community. We're growing and learning, and got some guests coming up. Going to get some people that we've had on before, and we're going to have Nancy's going to be back on, going to have a very famous author on. So this is going to get good, folks. And it's all tying in beautifully to what's going around. It's not just me. I think there's an awakening here. We're realizing this feeling, this sense that many of us have had. And it's like, well, is this the only one? Is this the only purpose, reason, possible cause? No, but it's a good one to consider. I'll say that. All right, folks. I'll see you later. All right. Bye-bye.